Hey everybody, welcome to the I Am Podcast YouTube channel.
Make sure to tap the bell, subscribe, and comment down below. Hey everybody!
Welcome to another episode of the I Am Podcast.
Yeah, what episode is this, Jesse? Number 8?
Number 9.
Number
nine
nine
of season 2. So, let's not forget, we had a whole first season.
Yeah, very cool. So we have a very, very special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Lillah Penddah. I am a DEI facilitator and consultant. I'm also an entrepreneur of a company called AFRO Facts. We create educational tools, Playtest games, workshops, and webinars to help people increase their awareness with respect to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and Black history. And I also host a podcast called The Conversation is the Relationship, where we talk all things diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and ultimately learn through the lenses of the experiences of different minority group members.
Very cool. That is one hell of an introduction.
You've done this a time or two. I love it. It was so good.
Okay.
She didn't even stutter once.
No.
I love it.
I have a question. What is DIA?
Yeah.
Okay, so diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity. You'll find the letters get interchanged, but I usually call it DIEB, or you'll usually hear DIE. So it's really just meaning the same things overall, really just increasing awareness around the lack of diversity that we see, the need to be more inclusive, and really the want to allow people to feel like they belong in any situation that they're in, and then understanding that equity doesn't equate to equality. It's really about understanding the different barriers that people face based off where they sit in minority groups, and their experiences.
Very, very amazing. That's incredible.
So, to take a step back, how did you, let's connect the dots for how you got to sitting with us today.
Yeah. So I'm currently in my own journey of pursuing parenthood on my own. I'm single and I had several uterine fibroids, which is something that's actually quite common in Black women, specifically women of West African descent, of which I am. My parents immigrated from Ghana. And so for 20 years, I struggled with uterine fibroids, with finally taking some real effective action over the last 3 years with 5 surgeries. And really what that did is it put me into a bit of a situation of having to decide, do I want children? And if so, I need to be pursuing that now. So although my uterine cavity has been deemed to be healthy and okay, unfortunately, they're seeing a little fluid in the uterus. So it's not making some of the doctors here in Edmonton really want to pursue an embryo transfer into my body. And they suggested surrogacy. Right. Now, I have a friend that just went through a beautiful surrogacy journey, and he actually referred me to Anu to get some more information about the process. And after having a wonderful meeting with Karen, she was incredibly empathetic and understanding. And she's like, you know what, I suggest you get a second opinion as well. Right. So that's kind of put me in her sphere in this space as a whole.
Right. I love that.
Karen's special.
She really is. I mean, I can say that because she's my mom, but I also think that what she brings to this world is very special and very important.
So
100%.
How did that kind of begin for you? Were you always having pain, or did you always know?
Ladies, let me tell you, it was a journey. So I actually started having issues with my period when I was 21 years old. I had a time frame at 21 where my period didn't stop for 21 days. It just kept going. And so I was having all kinds of symptoms, but you're young, you're 21, I'm in university, I'm partying, you're not paying enough attention to what's happening until it wouldn't stop. And I was actually about to travel outside of the country on my first international trip. And so I went to the doctor, I'm like, something is going on. I need my period to stop before I get on this plane.
Yeah.
And instead of having a real conversation with me about what could possibly be going on, the doctor just heard me say, I want my period to stop, and gave me a box of birth control. I had never had birth control before, really didn't know too much, anything about it. Right. And I didn't realize there's actually a chart that they're supposed to go through with you before prescribing birth control. I was leaving right away, so I was just like, okay, this is great, I have something. I went on that trip, and I was so depleted of blood because I had just been bleeding for such an extended period of time. Right. I could barely walk around. I was falling asleep everywhere. I had to start each day with juice. I just felt sick the entire time.
Oh,
And so,
gosh.
although I had a great time on the trip, physically, it was an incredible challenge. So when I came back, I'm like, you know what? I really need to do something about this because I was in university and you're usually walking around campus.
Yeah.
I could barely walk from point A to point B without having to stop, catch my breath, and then proceed. And
Oh
it
my
became
gosh.
so intense that this was my everyday. So luckily, the university I was at here in Edmonton, the University of Alberta, they have a hospital. So
Right.
I moseyed on over very slowly to the hospital, and I was actually turned away by emergency because as soon as I said my period won't stop, they're like, oh, well, we don't have a gynecologist. You'll have to go somewhere else. And so I was devastated
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I'm like, I barely have the energy to do anything.
Yeah.
But I took the bus to the Misericordia Hospital, which is in the west end of the city, and I was admitted to emergency there. And it turned out that my hemoglobin was so low that I should have been coding. So that's your red blood cell count,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
ultimately indicating how much oxygen is going to the rest of your body.
Right.
And so I'm sitting there in the room, and medical students are coming through wanting to see my hands and my eyes because they were all really surprised that I was just still conscious.
Yeah.
Like alert.
So I ended up having a blood transfusion. I got about 2 to 3 bags worth of blood,
Oh
brought
my
my hemoglobin
gosh.
up to a 90. Your standard spot you're supposed to be is at 120.
Right.
And they're like, you know what, your body has to do the rest.
Right.
So thereafter, I started taking iron supplements. Now, to me, I was just happy that, oh my gosh, I have my energy back. But this
Yeah.
definitely created a lifestyle change for me as a whole. I started working out, started being more physical, and just started being far more conscious of my body. Because when I was at the hospital, they asked me, was your hair falling out? Are you having trouble standing in the sun? Is your skin getting dry? And I'm like, oh my God, all of these things are happening. What do
Yeah.
you mean? These are all signs. I just had no idea. And so after that, I started to be more proactive in looking for an answer as to what was causing that.
Right. Sorry, the doctor that prescribed you the birth control, of course, never would have followed up with you.
Nope,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, he had done his due diligence and, checked the box off,
Yeah.
gave you what you needed, and that was that.
Yeah.
In his mind.
Yeah. Which is so sad because I do feel like that happens so often. Oh, you're having these problems? Here you go. Please don't call me again.
And what even made it worse was actually a female. I was
Oh.
referred to this doctor by my friend because I had
Right.
mentioned I was looking for a doctor,
Right.
and it was a female, and she
Oh,
didn't
that's
ask me any follow-up
heartbreaking.
questions. And she, in fact, told me that because I was 21, it was normal for my period to be like this. However, had she asked, she would have then found out that I had had my period for 10 years by then.
To be treated like that at 21. I'm so sorry.
That. Oh, I just.
Our system is just, it's crazy to me that we
Like-
just we don't take women's health to the
Seriously?
forefront. No, we don't take it seriously, like at all. Like
It,
it drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, and that the interesting thing is like that was just the beginning. It really started years of interacting with doctors that didn't take me seriously
Right.
when I was telling them that I am bleeding excessively every time I have a period.
Right.
And they would make notes in my file about me being depressed or me being aggressive or angry because I would press them. I would ask them, why aren't you ordering this test? Why are we doing this test over that test? Because I'm also trying to get an education at the same time to understand so that I too can ask better questions. But what I came to really find out is doctors don't like to be asked or challenged in any way.
No, they don't really. I mean, it shouldn't like
Blanket
broad
statement.
spectrum them,
Yeah.
but I feel like a lot of them don't want you to advocate for yourself at all. Which is
because
so
it's harder
sad.
for them. Like
Yeah,
it's
it
harder
makes
for
it-
them. Like
yeah.
when you're asked why and pushed, then you have to come up with a reason and defend what you're doing.
Yeah.
The system we currently live in definitely has a lot of issues, and
Yeah.
as a teenager, some of the, like, I bled for a long time as a teenager. That sounds really bad, but, like, I understand, like, I had super, super long periods, and I still need medications and help to keep my periods under control. And so I really feel for you because being turned down and being dismissed there's just nothing more frustrating because it's not normal.
No.
What you're facing is not normal.
No. So, what was kind of next for you then?
So after several years of, fighting with the system, trying to find a doctor that would help me, what I found was when you're dealing with a general practitioner, because they're general, there isn't a deep specialization in anything. And again, this is my opinion, this is my experience.
Right.
So what I realize is you are my order taker. I just come to you to ask for what I want, and then you give it to me, not by way of drugs, but by way of tests.
Yeah.
So whether I want a referral, whether I want an ultrasound, if I want a blood test, I have to be the instigator of that. Because if I'm going to rely on you, I might not get what I need.
Right.
So once I made that realization, I'm like, okay, I'm going to monitor this. I will monitor my hemoglobin levels. I will monitor my iron, and I will get regular ultrasounds, because it wouldn't be until several years later, until my mid-30s, that the connection between the bleeding and the fibroids would be made. Because even after I had the blood transfusion, when I talked to the doctor, he's like, oh, we don't know why you were bleeding. So I didn't have any information there. So cue up probably, I would say the last 7 years is when things really started to take a turn, because my period started to change. Now, the amount I was bleeding was starting to slowly increase over time. I had back pain. I was getting cramps, like really paralyzing cramps. But, you know, as women, we continue on with our day. The cramp's not going to stop us.
No.
And once I started to get to about 100 tampons per about the first 3 to 4 days of my period, I'm like, let me go to the doctor. Let me see what's going on. Yes, you heard me.
Oh my! Did you have time for anything else in your day? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh!
It became a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
Like if I had to
believe
go
that.
somewhere within the first 3 to 4 days of my period, I had to have tampons everywhere.
Oh.
My purse was full of tampons, a backpack. I had tampons in the car. And then depending on where I was going, I'd have to know where's the bathroom,
Right.
how easily can I access it? And it just became so much extra thought, because I had to coordinate my life around being able to change my tampon in a timely fashion, because I had to change about every 45 minutes on those days.
Oh my
Like,
gosh!
And this is just like, it runs your life. Like,
Yeah.
that you're just at the mercy of
Mother
Nature, I guess. Like that.
She's
Oh,
being a real wench.
yeah. That's.
Yeah.
So how long did you live like that? Like,
You know what? Here's the thing. I didn't know any other way. I've never had a light period.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what that was like. And one of my best friends, she's like, oh, my period's about 3 days. And I'm like, what?
Pardon
That's
me.
What does that even mean?
yeah.
So I just didn't know anything different. And so I got to a point where I really normalized everything that was happening, particularly from a pain perspective, from a symptoms perspective. I would just normalize it all. So when I started to get consistent back pain, because the size of the fibroids they were growing.
Right.
And when the fibroids grow, it increases the amount of blood flow that you have. And I didn't know that. So my stomach started to stick out because it was starting to distend because the fibers were getting so big. And then it was also pushing on the nerves in my back. So I couldn't sit on my own couch. I started sitting on a stool next to the couch, not thinking there's probably a problem here.
Yeah. No kidding.
Oh, my heart is just breaking for you. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it gets better.
I'm just flabbergasted. This is wow. So,
Yeah.
what did it take for a doctor to actually be like, okay, yeah, that's not quite right?
So after a while, my GP finally said to me, oh, because I had gone to Europe. And while I was away, I brought my own tampons with me to Europe, because I'm like, I can't be even trying to think about where am I going to get them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to bring a box with me.
Yeah.
So sure enough, on the way to Europe, I got my period on the plane.
Oh,
So, okay, this is fine. I'm prepared for this. It's okay. And within the first few days of arriving, I had my period. And so I noticed that my period was changing. It was just increasing over time. So when I got back, I went to the doctor. And that's when he specifically said to me, oh, yeah, it's due to your fibroids, which he had never mentioned before, because that would have been drilled into my brain.
Right.
And so he actually gave me an experimental drug, or a drug that they were trying, samples. It's called fibristol. And he's like, you can try this. It's supposed to shrink your fibroids. I actually saw quite a bit of success with it.
Right.
Oh, cool.
However, it was then removed from the market.
Oh, of course.
Oh.
And so I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? So my GP's like, you know what, we're going to get you in to see a specialist, and then we'll go from there. So when I went to go see my specialist, I did one more MRI before going because I'm like, if I'm going to go see a specialist, let's make sure all my imaging is updated.
Right.
Again, I'm requesting everything.
Yeah.
I'm requesting every single image I'm getting. And this was September 19th. I remember it like it was yesterday. And when I got those results back, I hadn't spent time reading the results because I would count on my GP to interpret for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started requesting copies of my results just so I could then read them.
Right.
And when I got those results, my fibroids some of them had more than doubled in size. And this was after stopping the fibrostol. So I was devastated.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So I go to the GP or the specialist, and by this time I had developed a trauma response to going to the doctor because of the level of frustration that I would be met with when I got there, when I tried to ask questions. So I would enter a doctor's office, nothing had happened, no one had talked to me, insta cry. I would just start crying every time I entered a doctor's office. And this was no different. I went to go see the specialist for the first time. I am crying. I could still communicate, but I am crying through everything.
Yeah.
And he was super empathetic, very supportive. And he's like, you know what? Stop taking the fibrostol because it's not good for your liver. So I'm like, okay, fine. And then he's like, we will monitor it together. So I'm like, okay, perfect. Now I've got someone on my side working with me. This is the closest I've ever been to any kind of result. I felt good about it. Left the office. And so I started to notice my period continue to change. And so I went to my GP. I'm like, okay, I need to make another appointment. What happened was the specialist's office did not advise me of the 1-year patient policy. If you don't come back and see the doctor in a year, you have to start the referral process from the beginning. You're no longer a patient of the office. So I can't just make a new appointment. I have to make a referral, wait the 6 to 9 months on the wait list, and then get in. So in this time, I'm thinking, I'm doing all of these tests. I'm still monitoring everything. And I'm thinking they're going to him, the results.
Yeah.
I did not know they were not. And so I was quite perturbed by that because I'm like,
kidding.
whose job is it to
Wild.
inform the patient? Where's the compliance? Where's the controls? And so when I finally got back in, I was quite frustrated by that. We confirmed that things were moving along, and he's like, okay, you're going to need surgery. I'm like, all right. And so he's like, I don't think I can do one surgery to get all of the fibroids. Let me bring in another doctor and we can get a second opinion. And so there would be a month in between those appointments where I would meet the new doctor and then the decision to have surgery. And in that time, I really started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I feel like I've been left to fall through the cracks. Like you said, we would be monitoring.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing my job. I don't feel like you've been doing yours. And now I've come back and things have gotten exponentially worse.
Yeah.
So when I went back in to meet the second surgeon, this was a woman. She was lovely. Couldn't say a bad thing about her. Again, I was just elated to have anybody be like, we can help you, we can solve this, let's do something.
Yeah.
So of course I'm crying and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful, thank you so much. And so because our initial interaction was so good, I'm like, you know what, let me ask her opinion on what happened with the previous doctor.
Yeah.
So I shared with her what had transpired and how I felt about it. And I asked her, do you think I should say something to him? And she said, yes, I think you should share your feelings with him. So she brought him back into the office, and there was just him and I proceeded to ask him, I'm like, can you help clarify like what your processes are? Just because I feel like you said we were going to monitor together, and I've been doing all this work, but I feel like I've been left to fall through the cracks. He was upset with me. He got upset. I'm sitting down on the exam table. He is standing by the door. So there's quite a bit of space between us as well. And he's like, well, you were rude to me the last time you were here. And I'm like, what? Rude? I was too busy crying to be rude.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And what happened was, this was at the beginning of COVID. So COVID would have started in about March. And my first appointment with him was in October. So nobody knew what was going on. We're wearing gloves, we're wiping down groceries, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
When I was walking to the exam room, he came out of another room and I saw him put hand sanitizer on his gloved hands. Now, when you have fibroids, sometimes you'll have an internal exam.
Right.
So when he entered the room, I asked him to change his gloves. It wasn't an immediate yes. He started to go back and forth with me on why it was standard practice for the doctors to put hand sanitizers on their gloved hands. Now, at the time, prior to this moment, I had also been doing the same thing because we didn't know anything. But I have a friend that's a nurse, And when I told her I was doing that, she's like, nope, you should not be doing that. And then she said to me, you wouldn't put hand sanitizer on a used condom and use it again, would you? And when she said that, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, now that you've said that, obviously not. I get it.
Yeah.
And so when the doctor and I were going back and forth on this, because he didn't just say, yes, let me change them.
Right.
He's trying to explain why it's okay. I said that to him. I'm like, you wouldn't put hand sanitizer on a used condom and use it again. And you could see he took pause and then he changed his gloves. I thought that was it. That's all. Nope. Instead, he sat on the emotions he felt from that statement for a month to bring it up in this moment when I started to ask him about his processes.
Oh my God.
And that is why he was
Wouldn't
mad
you,
at me.
like, I would just be embarrassed. Like, if I understand that we didn't know much and all of these things, but, like, the patient asks you to change your gloves, just change your gloves.
Yeah,
like,
you're not paying for them.
Yeah, like just change your, like, that just, wow.
To me, that's like so negligent too, to like treat you poorly and not follow up on your results because you said something off base.
Well, because you required something from him. You asked him to change his glove. Like,
which, like, it's not even off base.
the thought of that just makes me just like
yeah.
No, like, that would burn.
And then to be negligent and not help you.
And then for your little man feelings to be butthurt about it.
He's telling me that, and I'm a communicator by nature. I'm a public speaker in the DEIB space. So I'm very measured in my tone at all times. I know how to have a difficult conversation with people. And so when he said that, I'm in the interest of moving this conversation along. I'm like, okay, you know what? I apologize. I didn't realize you would be offended by it, but can you explain to me how come you said we were going to monitor and you didn't?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, I have 80 files on my desk that I have to action that I'm not able to get to. And he starts rattling off what his problems are. And then he proceeds to tell me, you need to get a new doctor. I don't want you as my patient anymore. And then he leaves the room. This whole time I'm sitting down. I have not moved. I have not raised my voice. I haven't called anybody a name. And I was so shocked. That I sat there and I'm just like, what just happened? And then as soon as I left the office, I went to my car and I called the CPSA, which is the College of Physicians Physicians, Surgeons in Alberta, I believe it is. Yeah. It's the regulatory body that you're able to make a complaint through. So I'm in the car calling them, trying to find out what is the complaint process, because I'm like, this is grossly inappropriate behavior. And when I was talking to the lady on the phone, I told her I wanted to make a complaint. First thing she asks me is, do you need any other services from the office? And I'm like, yeah, I'm still working with them. I just got a new surgeon that I'll be working with going forward. She's like, then I recommend that you wait, because if you make a complaint now, it's possible that it might impede your ability to get services from the office. I'm just like, you have got to be joking. You are telling me they can be so petty as to be like, we don't want to serve you, or we're going to delay serving you? Yeah. And this is what you're telling me as a warning. Problem number one, system right there says that there's a problem.
Our system in Alberta is so broken.
Oh yeah. At the same time, I'm not the one to do this with. I work in compliance in my day job.
Right.
Okay.
So I will take it to the top of the mountain. That's not a problem. I will do that. But what I didn't anticipate was the emotional impact that this would have.
Yeah.
So I waited to make my complaint. I had 3 surgeries with the female surgeon. She was lovely throughout the entire process, always wonderful to me. However, my fibroids were so bad that within the first 2 surgeries, the tools she would use would keep breaking because they had calcified so much.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then after the 3rd surgery, she's like, you know what? I am frustrated by your fibroids. I'm going to refer you to another surgeon who might be able to do something different to get the rest out. So I'm like, okay. And like every time you have a surgery, you go in, you're like, okay, this is going to be great. This is going to be solved. And then I wake up and she's there. And I didn't realize you want to wake up and the doctor is not there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, she's waiting for me. Yeah. She's going to say lovely things. I don't know. But it's just telling me, oh, we have to do this. We got to do that again. So it was always really tough to have a surgery and then go for your follow-up thinking things are going to be good. And they're like, no, we got to go back in. And so that would happen those 3 times. And then I would switch surgeons to a new surgeon who would do my last 2 surgeries. And again, she was wonderful. And she would be able to do the final bits of work.
Right.
But in the interim, I had filed this complaint where I outlined everything that I experienced. I filed the complaint May 21st, 2021. I got a response last year, 2023, September 19th. It took them 2.5 years to even look at it and start get the process going.
Right.
Now, towards the end, I had my last surgery in June of last year. The day following the surgery, I was interviewed by the investigator that was assigned my case. And so we had a good conversation. She was very supportive and empathetic, and she recorded the conversation. I also recorded the conversation just because I'm in compliance. I think like that.
Yeah.
But I forgot because you're also hopped up on drugs right after your surgery. But in the response letter that I got from her, because she did the investigation, she interviewed the office, the second surgeon I worked with, the first female, and then the initial first doctor I met with, the one that told me he didn't want me to be a patient anymore. He specifically said, and it's captured in written word, that he found my demeanor to be hostile, aggressive, and that I was rude to everybody in the office. And then the lady that I had nothing but fabulous things to say, in the document also says that she agrees that I was rude to everybody in the office. She never saw me interact with anybody in the office because we were always one-on-one in an exam room.
Right.
And then on top of that, in case that's not enough, the front desk staff also said that I was rude to them. Now, I'm a Black woman. I do not have the luxury of running around this world being rude to people. That's just not something I'm able to do freely. So I am very conscious of that. I might be direct with you, but that does not equate to being rude.
No.
I might ask you questions. That does not equate to being rude. And yet everybody I interacted with has now said I was rude to them. And yet within that time frame, nobody at any point in time said to me, your behavior is inappropriate. Yeah. If you continue like this, we won't be able to serve you.
Right.
So none of that was ever brought to me until I chose to make a complaint.
Yeah. Right. And as you should. Like, there's, that just makes me so sick. Like, the absolute disrespect of them sticking up for that doctor instead of the patient that needs it. Like,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, and the sad thing is, I'm sure you're not the only person who's made a complaint about someone who acted like that.
Yeah.
Like,
you're probably not even the first person to make a complaint against that doctor.
Yeah, like, it's just, it's so disheartening.
It changed my life. It definitely changed my life. And it wasn't so much about the initial doctor, because he showed me who he was. I believed him.
Yeah.
I get it. You're that guy.
Yeah.
It was the female doctor that really crushed me,
because that's a betrayal.
I was praising this woman for every small thing she did because I was so grateful for someone to be listening to me and taking action based off of what I said.
Right.
So every surgery, I'm like, I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much. Like, I was very vocal with my gratitude.
Right.
And so for her, who was the one that recommended I speak with him in the first place, to then turn around and say that she agrees that I was rude when we had like a glowing relationship.
Yeah.
I was gobsmacked by. And that really showed me that it does not matter what I say, regardless of if I'm right. It comes down to what the competing party says. And if they can find one extra person to agree with them, then they become right, whether they're right or wrong.
Yeah.
And that is a very common theme that we see when it comes to discrimination and white fragility.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Like, not only were you in pain and you needed help and all of these things, but then to be treated so poorly.
Yeah, at every turn to be met with some sort of frustration or someone who couldn't just stand up and do right by you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's brought me here. So within that process of having those surgeries, just before I was starting to, or within having the first few, I was also doing some IUIs, so intrauterine insemination. Yeah. And I did 3 and none of them worked. And that's when we clicked in and we're like, okay, it must be the fibroids are actually impeding your ability to get pregnant.
Right.
So the hope was that once they were cleared, we would be able to do so. However, they're seeing fluid in the uterus, so they're less inclined to want to do an embryo transfer into me, and that's why surrogacy was presented as an option.
Right.
And then after having a wonderful conversation with Karen, the idea of getting a second opinion didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
Which is interesting after what I went through with these doctors.
Yeah.
You think I would be constantly looking for a second opinion. But the emotional impact of it all has been words don't describe. After I got that letter, that response letter on September 19th, I was out for a month. Like I could not function in my day-to-day. I was crying every day. The trauma induced by that. And this was also the first time I had really experienced this level of discrimination in my most vulnerable state when I'm seeking help. And it blew me all the way out of the water. I'm a confident person, and it made me scared to step out into the world again.
Yeah.
Because it showed me that it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter my personality or who I was. Right. Someone will take something they don't like and turn it into something else and then use it against me, because that's what happened. At what you would think would be a high level of professionalism, you're working with the medical industry, that is where it happened. So it really put a new level of distrust. I have yet to find a new family doctor. I'm definitely dragging my feet on that, because I don't know how I can trust another doctor if they are not at least a person of color, just so there's some kind of ground level commonality.
My doctor is a person of color, and he is wonderful, and he's in Drumheller, so that's a hell of a drive for you, but he's great. He is lovely. You would love him.
It's so sad. Like,
but that is awful. Yeah.
Like that's the position you're in when, in a lot of ways, Canada is presented and sold as very welcoming, and we have
the best healthcare.
That we have, that we're here to help you, that you don't have to pay all of these things. I mean, we pay in our taxes, but it's different. That you can walk into a GP and not leave with a bill, but
our system is so broken. Yeah,
that you're in a position where you're scared to find a family doctor, and also on the flip side, there's not a lot of family doctors to pick from. Like on the other side, like it's not like you have a multitude of options. Yeah. You might have to take Drumheller doctors seriously, because
honestly, that's what it's coming down to. Because I've never had a black doctor, and I've seen a lot of doctors based on this one fibroid issue. I've been to a lot of doctors. I've never had a black doctor, because trust and believe, if I had one, I would be there. I would be there. So it's been interesting to have that, and then to even try and find one now. If you can find one, they're not taking new patients. Yeah. So it really puts you in a place of just like, what do I do? And for people that, that get impacted to the point of really not wanting to move because of the trauma that they felt as a result, this is why people don't go to the doctor or stop going to the doctor. Yeah. Now, my fibroid journey has made me exceptionally health conscious aware. Right. So I will eventually find one, just because I care about my health in a new level. But I can absolutely see why people will stop going after something like this, because you don't feel safe. 100%. You don't feel like you're being cared for. And from a doctor's perspective, they'll turn it into a non-compliant patient. Oh, well, the patient's just not listening to me. Yeah. No, it's because you've put the fear of God into them, and they don't want to come back to you anymore. So they're like, it's more worth it to not go to the doctor. I can work through whatever pain I feel, versus having to be put in a position and be dealing with that level of discrimination when, again, you're in your most vulnerable state.
Oh, absolutely. It's just heartbreaking to me. Like, that should not be how you feel in a room with someone who is supposed to take care of you, who took an oath to take care of you.
Yeah.
Like,
And to go through the process of making a complaint and having it be dismissed when so that was one thing he said in the letter. What was really interesting in reading the response letter was that there were a series of lies about events that transpired. Right. So there were a lot of infactual statements made. Right. So to give you an example, the very first surgery I was scheduled for, I couldn't have been happier that day. Because I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Yeah. We're going to get some relief. Yeah. This is the closest I've ever been. I don't even know. I go to the hospital. I am in the best mood possible.
Yeah.
They tell you what to drink and not eat and all of that. I'm feeling good about myself. I'm talking to the admitting nurse. She's like, okay, what did you eat before? When did you last eat? What did you drink last?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I drank a clementine juice. She's like, oh, was it clear? I'm like, yes, it was clear.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, let me talk to the anesthesiologist about that. It was a clear juice.
Right.
I did not realize when they say clear, it really means water, tea, or apple juice. There's really only 3 options that they'll accept.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting in the chair thinking, this is it. We're going to get going. She comes back to me and she says, we're going to have to cancel the surgery because the anesthesiologist doesn't like what you drank. Now, I will own this all day. I made that mistake. That was a mistake I made. It was a clear juice, but it just didn't suit their requirements. Of course, devastated.
Yeah.
2 weeks of on the couch at Christmas crying because like I was so dismayed by it. But in the report, what is written is that the anesthesiologist reported to the investigator that I told them that I drank a smoothie. I never spoke with the anesthesiologist that day. I only spoke with the admitting nurse. You don't speak with the anesthesiologist until you are in a bed, cap on, ready to go into the room. I didn't make it that far. And so also a smoothie, I know what a smoothie is. That's just crushed up food. So yes, I know you can't drink that. But yet you're saying that I told someone something that I'd never even seen that day. That was number one. The front desk staff also stated that after I ended up having that surgery canceled, I called them and I blamed them for it. Infactual. I was too busy crying to call anybody. Yeah. And when I did call, I know the name of the person I spoke with because I speak to her often for all of my scheduling. Right. And I was crying on the phone. She even asked me like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I didn't complain to anybody because I knew it was my own fault. Why would I blame the office for that? Right. But yet they're saying that I blame the office for that. So it was not just what the doctor said, but the fact that there's these series of infactual statements being laid out in a document for this complaint. So it became more than just about what the doctor did. It's now becoming an attack on my character and my integrity. And for me, that's something that I will not allow anybody to play with. So I had to request a complaint review. So basically for them to review the decision that they made. Right. And I had a month to do that. And it puts you right back into the trauma. Ugh. And it was terrible because I'm 2.5 years removed from the instigating event. And now you want me to jump back in and I have to recount everything to you as to why I'm seeking this complaint. And you can't recount the details. You have to speak to specifically why you feel they need to review their decision. So I'm speaking to, well, there's a series of infactual statements that are made. Right. To take it one step further, the investigator who recorded our conversation, she writes in the investigator report that I had mentioned that I blamed the doctors for canceling my surgery and that we never even spoke about that. And you've got it recorded. But she wouldn't provide me with a copy of the recording when I asked her. And so luckily I found my recording, but it's just like all of these things aren't adding up. And it doesn't seem like anybody's saying, hey, hold on here. Something seems amiss. Yeah.
Well, and just it's taken, one smaller thing and turned it into this massive, and it never, I don't know you well, all these things, but I don't think you needed it to get this big. You just wanted resolution for the one initial instance, and then all of a sudden this snowball of cover-up comes into play. All of these people who weren't even relevant to the situation are now,
Yeah, why are we sticking up for a doctor that doesn't deserve it?
Well, or to just say, you know what, I made a mistake, I had a bad day, and just own what you did in the first place, and then just let it be at that. We took one small thing and we made a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah, in terms of why all these other people have to have a role.
This is the wildest story, but you know what? I'm sure you're not the only person with a story like this.
Mm-hmm. Which is sad.
Oh, it's awful, yeah. I actually have a not a similar story, but I had been asking my doctor some questions, and I had same as you, tons of questions for her the one day, and she called me an idiot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was like highly upsetting. But I didn't say anything. I just went, okay. And we left, and I tried to make a complaint against what had happened, and I was told that I wouldn't be able to go to that clinic anymore. And that's one of the only clinics in my community. The other clinic doesn't take new patients. So where was I going to go? So I ended up getting a new doctor in Drumheller, which is an hour and a half from where I live, because that's where I felt more comfortable to go. And I couldn't make a complaint against her because that's my son's doctor. So
really,
yeah, like it's crazy to me because it's totally set up so that you cannot make a complaint, and if you do, this is what happens, right? Like, yeah.
Like they tell you to advocate for yourself. They tell you to do that.
Yeah.
And yet that is all that I did.
Yeah.
And now I'm being punished for it because they'll attribute my frustration to my personality versus attributing it to the situation I'm in.
Yeah.
You bleed that heavily every month and see how well you do through that. And then you do that for 20 years straight.
Yeah.
You know, like it's interesting, but it put me in a position of being hyper conscious of other people's perceptions of me. Right. So after all of this, now when I had to do my follow-up with my last surgeon there, I asked her point blank. I'm like, I'm looking for some feedback. Have you ever found me to be rude or aggressive?
Right.
And she was lovely. She's like, no, I think you were just frustrated, but looking at your situation, of course you would be frustrated.
Right.
And so it's like, how come you're able to see that? But yet this gentleman over here was not, and took it as if I was attacking him by asking him questions about his job.
Yeah. I don't understand all of the people in his office protecting him like that. Like, that makes me so sick. Because how many other women is he doing that to? You know?
Well, and how many other women in that office are regularly making it okay?
Yeah. I have a question. I'm sorry. I don't know this. Will the fibroids come back?
So, yeah. That's part of why I had to keep having surgeries, because I had something called a pedunculated fibroid. Right. So fibroids can be on the outside, in the lining, or actually hanging in the inside of the uterus. Wow. I had a buffet. I had a little bit of everything. And so we had to remove the ones that would impact my ability to have an egg implant in the lining. Right. And so one of them was pedunculated, hanging from the top, with part of it being in the uterus and part of it being in the lining. Wow. So anytime they tried to take it out, they could only go up to the lining to make it flush, because they couldn't see what was in the lining itself. So they can't get at what they can't see. Right. However, in going just up to the lining, making it flush, there was possibility that more of it would just slowly come out, because you're kind of peeling away layers of it at a time. Right. And that's what happened. After my fourth surgery, I'm like, this is it. Yeah. This is the one. This got this new surgeon. She feels confident. Let's do this. So I'm like, okay, we're going to get going as soon as I have this follow-up. Within 4 months, it had come back. And that crushed me, because I'm like, it feels hopeless. Yeah. What am I even doing? It surely can't be okay to be having this many surgeries in this tiny little space in my body. And so that threw me. So there was a lot of like high, low, high, low, high, low throughout the whole process. So I had to engage a therapist, because I just was like, this is more than I can handle. And I'm a single person doing it. So someone would have a partner where you're discussing this with, you have constant support. I didn't have that. So I engaged my therapist, and she's been with me through the entire journey, which was life-saving. And then I had a couple girlfriends that I felt comfortable enough sharing the whole story with, because after everything that happened, you don't feel inclined to want to tell people. No. Yeah. Also, I don't have a lot of Black people around me. Right. In a professional capacity, I do, but not in a personal capacity. And when I was growing up, I didn't grow up around people that look like me. So the bulk of my friends are white or of other ethnicities, just not a ton of diversity, but it's grown over time. And so I was really protective of just the whole journey, doing the IVF to get eggs and embryos, considering doing it on my own, looking at surrogacy. And it took me some time to be comfortable enough to talk to people. And that really came after receiving that response. I'm like, you know what? If this is happening to me, and people know who I am,
Right.
they know that this is not any of my personality, what they're saying. But if I tell them, they're going to think about it differently because they know me.
Yeah.
So if
Absolutely.
there's an opportunity to put a voice, put a face to these stories, then maybe people will care a little bit more because it'll be a friend of a friend. Oh, I know them. I've seen them before. They're going to pay attention differently than if it's someone they don't know and they're like, oh, I've heard about it, but since I don't know anyone, it doesn't mean as much. That is what really inspired my podcast and really brought a new level of healing to me, because the more you talk about it, the more you release it.
Absolutely.
And so now I'll tell anybody that'll listen to me, because this is not okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell the world, you think you're going to do this to me? I am not the one. I will take it all the way. So I've submitted that response. I have to wait on what I get from them, and then I can take it to the ombudsman, which is my intention. But I will tell everybody, because this is not okay. And I want people to be able to feel like they can use their voice,
Right.
because there's fear. There's a lot of fear tied up into that. What am I going to lose if I say something?
Yeah.
I lost a doctor, but at the same time, did I want to continue working with that doctor anyway?
Yeah.
With that kind of behavior? No. Did I want to continue working with that office with that kind of behavior? Definitely not. I'm not meant to be here. And the universe made that change for me. So it's been quite the journey of healing, but it's inspired me. I've allowed it to inspire me in the work that I was already doing, and really just being able to create space to amplify other voices.
That's so beautiful. Like, yeah, incredible. That's incredible. Wow.
There's so much to you in your story and all the things you do. So what I would love is, like, I don't want to say educate us, but give, like, if there's something for us to leave as humans,
Yeah.
as ladies in this world, help us understand. Give us some education. Like, teach us something.
I think this whole thing has been teaching.
True.
I think what it comes down to is, we all get to make a choice every day when we get up. We get to decide who we want to be in this world. And as part of that decision, you also decide how you are going to react to the things that are presented to you. I think the biggest thing is that we now know definitively that discrimination is real, systemic racism is real. I don't think we need much more proof to believe that that is the case. Now, the next step is when we find ourselves in those moments where we've made a mistake, maybe we've done the wrong thing, maybe we've said the wrong thing, said something ignorant or racist or a microaggression, and we're now being told by someone, hey, what you've said has offended me, or what you said is off color. Did you know that that's racist? Just because someone's telling you you've done something wrong does not equate to being racist. Just because someone says you've said something ignorant does not equate to being racist. We're not being taught this in schools. So therefore, we are essentially all at a disadvantage of really knowing what it means to commit a microaggression, really knowing what it means to be offensive from a systemic perspective. And we're learning as we go. So what I would encourage people to do is that rather than being afraid of making a mistake, make the mistake, because you're going to learn in that moment. Trust and believe you will learn quickly, and you probably won't make that mistake again. But be more afraid of making the mistake and no one telling you that you've made that mistake.
Right.
When someone tells you that you've said something offensive, that's an opportunity to not get defensive. That is an opportunity to be open and listen. A lot of people will get caught up in being defensive. How dare you say I'm ignorant? What? I'm not racist. And they just go on this defensive. And once you step into that defensive state, no information comes in, because you're too busy getting angry, working yourself up into a frenzy, and you're not going to receive anything they're saying.
Right.
Rather than do that, put your ego on the shelf and hear what they have to say. It's a learning opportunity. It's a listening opportunity. People will get caught up in trying to have back and forth over it. No, just listen and then let it sit with you, because clearly you'll often hear people say, well, that was not my intention. That's fine. Not everybody walks around going, I intend to offend a person today.
Yeah.
We often do it without it being our intention. However, just because it's not your intention, words still carry power and meaning. So the words you've chosen can still hurt, even though you didn't mean for it to hurt. So what you need to do is acknowledge the result. Acknowledge the fact that, ooh, I have hurt this person. You know what? It wasn't my intention. I'm sorry. You got to say the words. You've got to say the words. Do not give me, I'm sorry that you're upset. I'm sorry that you didn't like that. No, 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 no. You've made me upset. I don't like what you've done. So you have to acknowledge the action you've taken and the result you've gotten, even though it wasn't your intended result. People get caught up in that, and then they'll try to shirk their duty of giving a full and genuine apology by using semantics. Don't do that. Let's just be real within the moment. It's okay to make a mistake, providing that you learn from it, because your reaction in those moments are going to tell people who you are. And we're in a space where we believe people a lot faster. We don't need to see it the 2, the 3, the 4 times of making the same mistake in different ways. If you get defensive in that moment and you're unable to receive what I'm saying, then that tells me enough. I know who you are. I believe you. I'll move on. But if you're really able to sit there and be like, you know what? I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. I can now do something different. You have awareness now. And when we have awareness, we have choice. The choice to do things differently and go forward in a more positive way.
Yeah. You are such an incredible speaker.
Truly.
Like, I could sit here and listen to you all day.
I get that a lot.
Like, so
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Like, what else do you know about? Okay, this is my question. What is something that you're, like, super, super passionate about that not a lot of people know? Like, do you knit? Do you sew? Do you yodel?
Oh, okay.
Something?
People know. I'm a teller. So I'm really passionate about baking. I'm a self-taught baker, a hobby baker, if you will. I use my friends as my quality control team. We don't pay you. We only pay in calories. It's a lifetime commitment, and all you've got to do is try whatever I make. So I did that for several years, and I would end up doing some of my friends' weddings and stuff like that.
So what is your, like, cupcakes, cakes?
You know, being a baker has definitely made me a little bougie in my baking, a little, I don't want to say snooty, but I'm very discerning about what I like to eat as baking and what I consider to meet my standards. Right. So I'm very much more of a cupcakes kind of girl. Right. I like the pomp and circumstance of making a cake that is quite beautiful. Having said that, not a big fondant person. Fondant, it only serves an aesthetic purpose. It does not serve a flavor purpose. Yeah. And I want my cake to be serving a flavor purpose the whole time, and then also have aesthetics added to it. So I'll primarily focus on cakes, cupcakes, and I've dabbled in the cookie world. I've got 3 strong cookie recipes that I'm very happy about. The cakes are where I really live. And what's funny is, like, I love going to bakeries to see kind of like, ooh, what are people making? What's going on? Yeah. And the thing is, I won't buy baking if I feel like I can make it at home. And I can make most things. Right. So I go to a bakery and I will look at it and people will be like, oh, you should get this, you should get that. I'm like, I can make that. So it's not coming home with me today.
Okay, I have a question. You live in Edmonton, right?
I do.
Okay. Do you like the Duchess Bakery?
Okay, glad you asked. So yes, love the Duchess Bakery. I have also taken their classes. So I know how to make their Duke cake.
Me too.
I've also taken their macaron class. And so I like to really hang out in fancy bake town. Is really what it is.
My Duke cake, though, was homely. It was not pretty, but it did taste good, so it's fine.
It's my go-to chocolate cake recipe now.
Oh, yeah.
And people love it. But
so
what was interesting is, I see the price of the cake there. I think it's $50 for their 8-inch Duke cake, which is about that high. Yeah. And I'm like, absolutely not. I will learn to make it, and then I could make 2 for that price.
That was my thought too. My mom bought me the cookbook, and the first time I hadn't taken a class from them, and the first time that I made the Duke cake, I didn't read the recipe first. Like, you should make some of the stuff the day before,
Yes, it's very process intensive.
9 hours. I could have driven to Edmonton and bought the cake faster than I made it that day. But it was good and it was worth it and it was fine. But It was a day.
Yes. No, I make the cake. I don't always make the icing because the icing I'll have to make the day before because it is just, there's a lot of steps. And I'm like, this is why
So
it's
many
worth
steps.
$50.
Yeah.
I get it.
Truly.
You know, it warms my heart to see you speak so passionately about everything.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we find, Jer and I, and even in just what we do and the people we talk to, the journey is so all-consuming. And I always love when people have something else that like brings a spark in their eye, something else that's separate of the hard and the painful things. And I love that you have that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Honestly, I will say, because like Black History Month is a big time of year for myself and my business.
Right.
And so this Black History Month that just passed was very healing for me. It was very healing because it had me out in the community, doing a lot of events, facilitating, and just hanging around Black people, which guess what? Hanging around people that look like you, good for your soul. Good for your soul. And so it really showed me that I am able to take this situation that just put me in the ground, like really, and this is where one would use swear words to convey the depth and breadth of like how it just crushed my being for a long time there. And for now to be in a spot where I can share the story, not for trauma dumping as some would try to construe it, but to be like, these things happen. And because these things happen, we got some work to do.
Right.
And if you're not sure what kind of work to do, I can help you with that. We can figure it out. We can do something. But no one's going to be able to come up to me and say, discrimination's not real. Racism's not real. You're overreacting.
Right.
I'm not. Because I know what it's like to be in that situation. I know how it can change the core of your being when you were a strong person before, and it can make you feel like you're not as strong anymore. And, you know, I'm in this journey. I'm still here, still actively pursuing being a parent on my own. And that in and of itself is hard on its own before you add in these layers of everything else I've been going through to get to that goal. So, you know, it's just a reminder that you get to choose. Every day you get to choose who you want to be in the situations that you're presented with. And I choose to be a world changer. If there's opportunity for me to change the world in a positive way for others, I'm going to take those opportunities. And if that means I've got to share with people what I went through so that they know that they're not alone, that this does happen, that there's validity in their feelings and their experience, then that's what I'm going to do.
That's amazing. Can I just tell you, I think you're going to be one hell of a mother.
I agree.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I think so too. I've got a lot of friends with kids, and you should just see me and a baby. All of a sudden, the baby can sneeze right into my mouth, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're still so cute!" What? And I'll try and do that. Oh, you might not come back from that.
Okay, what is one thing that not many people know about you?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm a teller, so people know a lot about me. One thing that people, you know what? I'll say this. I think people don't recognize how much I want to be a parent. People know all of the other stuff because I am on social media. I am sharing. But I don't think that people know the depth and breadth of what I feel in my heart when it comes to being a mother. I am inherently designed to be a mother, and that shows up in the way I am in my relationships and my friendships. I'm a nurturer by nature. I love to host a party. I love to feed people. If I'm trying to make you something, like I'll bake and I'll give it away. Yeah. I don't bake for myself. I bake to give it away.
Yeah.
And that brings me so much joy. And so it's really just a physical manifestation of my feelings for a person. Right. I am at my best when I have to take care of somebody. That's where I really shine in being able to support a person through any kind of situation. And that's that motherly energy finding a place to put itself in my life until I have a child.
Right. Oh, that's so beautiful. Wow.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to know about us?
One thing I will say is because now I'm acutely aware of how people act in the medical industry.
Right.
And what has been interesting to see is, in spite of what I've been through, on the other side of this, as I share my story, I'm really finding all people want is some empathy. Literally, all people want is some empathy. And I think the conversation I had with your mother, with Karen at ANU, was an eye opener for me, because she brought to the forefront things I hadn't considered. I did not even consider getting a second opinion. It just didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
And the way she presented it to me was really beautiful. She's like, you know what? If you were my sister, I would suggest this.
Yeah.
And so for someone who just met me, doesn't really know anything about me except what I'm telling, which they could easily deem she's making it up.
Right.
She's like, if you were my sister, if you were my family, she chose to take me and put me in that position in her mind, and then base her response off of that level of closeness to her. Now, people don't have to do that. And so for her to do that, that is what stuck with me, because I'm like, she is introducing new hope into my life, new hope into the situation where I thought, oh, there's only one path and I'm going down this particular path. She was very honest about the costs and the experience of surrogacy. And she's like, look, if there's an opportunity for you to carry the child on your own, that's going to be substantially less expensive, which is obvious. But she works for a surrogacy agency, so she could easily just push the surrogacy so they make their money. But it was the fact that she put me into her family, in her thought, in her perspective of me, and then also just gave me the truth. And so that really brought a new level of optimism into a situation that had really been drowned in negativity for me.
Oh, I think that's like, Karen is so special in so many ways. I am so blessed to know her, and she calls me one of her own, and I am so thankful. But if you are an intended parent, Karen is the person you want to talk to. Like, she's she's incredible.
No, it was, and I've taken up all of her suggestions. So I'm seeking a second opinion. I've had appointments this week, and it gives you new energy to fight with.
Yeah.
I love that.
Be like, yes,
You've gotten
I'm going to
some
do
of that.
this.
Yeah.
And it's always having someone else who believes in you and who believes in your story and can see how you can get to where you want to go
and wants to help.
So refreshing.
Yeah.
Like when you've fought against a system and fought against so many people, that I'm very, my heart's happy for your heart, because you've got new energy and feeling good with new plans and new options.
Yeah. I know it'll come to me. I know it'll come to me. It's the method of which that it comes that is what is undetermined. And I've really surrendered to that. I'm a hippie. I really love the universe and all them things. I believe in all of that. And so it took some time to get here, let me tell you, because you really have to grieve the loss of the idea of the life that you thought you had. So at the beginning, not so surrendered. After all of this, much more surrendered, because I know I will get there. I know I'm meant to be a parent. I will be a parent. As to whether I end up carrying the child on my own or I'm blessed with the use of a surrogate, that is what's left to be determined. And that's not necessarily for me to figure out. I'm much more open to the universe presenting that option to me. I will just be ready. I will be ready, stay ready, so I don't have to get ready, and be able to move forward in any direction.
Well, I cannot wait for the day that Karen has your baby card on her wall.
Woo! Bells and whistles. There will be a Simba moment on a mountain somewhere.
I love that.
Where I am,
we'll be taking the pictures
in the air and just making all kinds of noise.
I will be there making noise for you.
I'll bring my bells. Well, Lillah, we don't want to take up too much of your Friday, so thank you.
Yes, truly. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story and being real and open and honest and teaching us and
this was incredible.
Sharing you.
Yes.
So much. I appreciate it, ladies. Honestly, just thank you for the opportunity. This is exactly what I'm talking about in sharing the story. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, if you had come to me last year, even at the end of the year, I don't know if I would have been in a place to be able to do it. And so the fact that I feel so comfortable doing it, I'm like, okay, we're on that healing journey.
Yeah. I love that for you. I mean, I don't love that this is your story, but I love that you're in a place of healing and
it's getting better, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, I want you to plug your podcast.
Yes, plug
please.
your podcast and where we can find you.
Everybody,
all these things.
Lillah Penddah. The podcast is called The Conversation is the Relationship, because the types of conversations we have ultimately dictate the level of relationship that we have with a person.
Right.
If you're talking about the weather, living in this land of small talk, chances are you've got a surface level conversation.
Yeah.
But if you're talking to someone about your hopes, your dreams, your traumas, chances are you've got a greater level of trust with that person, which leads to a deeper conversation. So we want to start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We want to be able to share our experiences as minority group members so that we're able to learn through the lens of those experiences. So the conversation is the relationship. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Just type in the name, you'll find it there. You can also check out our website at afrofacts.ca for our educational tools played as games if you're looking to increase your awareness with respect to Black history, Canadian Black history, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, whether it be for a school, whether it be for your organization, whether it be for your DEI committee. We are there to support you in doing what you can, stepping into your allyship journey in a meaningful way.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Jinx.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lillah.
Have a wonderful weekend,
yeah.
and I'm sure we will be chatting with you again.
Yeah.